Stop that. Yeah. I hear 'em chatting the noise.
Welcome all of our viewers from right around the country. I think we'll have probably hundreds, if not thousands, of Greens supporters and members joining us online. You might not be able to see it, but we are in a fabulous room full of smiling faces and fabulous signs and amazing people. So we hope that you can be here next time because Queensland is where it's at. Just saying. So for all our folks joining us online, we'll just acknowledge that wherever you're calling in from is Aboriginal land. It always was and it always will be, because sovereignty was never ceded in this ancient land of ours. And we're here gathering in Meanjin. We've just had a wonderful welcome from local First Nations owner Derek Oram-Sandy. And we just acknowledge that on the path to genuine reconciliation and healing, there needs to be truth-telling, there needs to be treaty, and there needs to be a voice, and there needs to be justice and reparations. And that's a path that we're all walking on together, and I really hope that in this coming term of Parliament we can see some serious action to finally close that gap and have some justice for our First Nations owners of this land. So thank you all for participating in this evening. We are thrilled to be hearing from our leader tonight and our top candidates here in Queensland. They're all tops, but you get to hear from Penny and Max. And we've got Stephen Bates for Brisbane and Libby Watson-Brown for Ryan also in the room. But I think we're also going to hear from some of our other senators and lower house candidates via the magic of the interwebs, which thankfully is not in my control. But someone will press a button, you'll get to see so many of our great candidates right around the nation. But it's now my absolute pleasure to introduce a dear friend of mine, someone I've known for many, many years, who stands just 1.5% away from kicking out Pauline Hanson from the Senate. Penny, 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 Penny. And who, if you haven't yet met her, she will just wow you. She's a regional teacher. She's been a public school teacher for nigh on 30 years. She's lived and worked right around the state. She's currently based in Gladstone. And when we campaign together in regional Queensland, the regional Queenslanders are so excited to say, oh, you're one of us. Great. So we are so excited about Penny's prospects, and not just to boot out Pauline, but to have her fabulous advocacy skills. So please join me in welcoming your next Senator for Queensland, Penny Allman-Payne.
Hi everyone, and I too want to acknowledge that we are meeting this evening on the sovereign and unceded lands of our First Nations peoples, and that we have a lot of work to do to achieve justice for First Nations people in this country. As Larissa said, I am a high school teacher from Gladstone. I've been teaching for 30 years, and I've actually worked right across Queensland. So I was raised in far north Queensland in the small town of Cardwell near Tully and Cairns. I've taught in central Queensland, I've taught on Bamaga and Cape York, I've taught in Wide Bay, Burnett and down here in Brisbane. And one of the things about being a teacher is that when you're a teacher you get to meet everyone in the community. And for the last decade, I've been campaigning really hard to increase funding for public education, because this government has reduced funding to public schools at 5 times less the rate of the manner in which they're funding private schools. And to me, that is a national disgrace. So I've been campaigning for a long time to change that, and I'm really proud to be standing for a party that has a policy to fully fund our public schools, not just the schools themselves, but to make sure that parents aren't having to pay those out-of-pocket fees that we know are becoming pervasive in the public school sector. But I'm running for more than that. In the last decade, it's become really apparent to me that we need to do far more than fully fund our schools to tackle the inequality crisis, particularly in the way that it impacts young people in this country. I teach kids in my classes who are living in cars. I teach kids in my classes who are living in a shed without power or water because there is no affordable housing in the community in which I live. And I have travelled with Larissa right up and down Queensland in the last 9 to 10 months, and we're hearing the same story over and over again. There is not enough affordable housing. Our vacancy rates are below 1% in just about every regional community in this state, and people can't afford to buy or rent homes in Brisbane either, and that needs to change. I'm teaching young people who are experiencing mental health issues, depression and anxiety at rates that we have never seen before. And we need to address that. We need to get mental health into Medicare. We need to make sure that every young person and older adult as well has no caps on the number of sessions that they can have or any out-of-pocket fees so that they can access that. I'm teaching kids... I teach the kids of women who are fleeing domestic violence and who can't find a place to live and don't have access to the services that they need for themselves and their children. And I could go on and on and on. I also teach young people who are concerned about their future. They worry about whether they can move out of home and afford a house to rent or buy. They worry about whether they can afford to go to university or TAFE. And if you live in a regional area, it is particularly concerning when your HECS debt or your TAFE debt is going to be big, when you also have the added costs of having to live away from home. I also teach young people who are so concerned about the climate. And if anybody tells you that kids in regional Queensland aren't concerned about the climate crisis, they're lying. They are. They are looking to us as the adults in the room, and they want us to make change. So I'm running at this election to tackle the inequality crisis, to get more affordable housing, to get dental and mental into Medicare, to make sure that we tackle the climate crisis, and to make sure that we have a future for every single young person in this country. Now, as Larissa has already said, we only need a 1.5% swing to win this second seat in Queensland. We want to kick out Pauline, we want to keep Clive out, and we want to push a new government to do better on climate and inequality. Like many of you, I've been on pre-poll for the last week and a half. I've been on pre-poll in Gladstone, down the Gold Coast, across Brisbane. I'm flying to Townsville tomorrow and I'm going to be handing out there. And I don't know about you, but it feels good out there. So I'm really excited that we're going to have a second Green Senator for Queensland. And I'm also really excited that it's not just going to be me who's going to be added to the Senate team, but that we're actually going to have some other new senators from around the country, and we're going to have the biggest block of third-party senators in the Parliament. And on that note, and assuming that the technology works, we're going to hear from some of those people now.
This election, people are ready for change.
They want to elect people who'll tackle the big issues.
They want to see billionaires and big corporations actually pay their fair share of tax. They're fed up with the Liberals and Labor taking donations from big corporations and billionaires and in turn giving them special treatment.
I'm David Shoebridge and I'm your Green Senate candidate for New South Wales.
I'm Pete Wish-Wilson.
I'm Lydia Thorpe.
I'm Dorinda Cox
I'm Barbara Pocock and I'm your Green Senate candidate
in Western Australia.
For Victoria.
in South Australia. I'm running for the Senate because I want to see action on climate change and a fairer Australia.
Across the country, we are seeing a massive surge in support for Greens policies and ideas. And is it any wonder? We're the only party with a real plan to end coal and gas, fix the cost of living, tackle the affordability crisis in housing, and deliver a fully empowered national ICAC.
Down here in Tasmania, there's a real mood for change, and we're seeing a huge surge in support for the Greens. I think this is going to be the most important federal election of our time. We are very short window to act.
This election, your vote is more powerful than ever.
If just a few hundred people changed their vote, we could kick the Liberals out and put the Greens in balance of power.
We'll push the next government to phase out coal and gas and deliver services that will give everyone a better life.
The Greens are on track to become the third most powerful party in the country.
By voting one Greens in the Senate, you're voting to elect Greens MPs to fight for the things you believe in, like action on climate change,
Like free public education.
Like fighting for country. And with strong black women in Parliament, we will stand up for what's right.
This election, vote to kick the Liberals out.
Vote for your children's future.
Vote for treaty.
Vote for climate.
Vote one Greens.
vote one Greens.
Well, you heard it spoke on the screen. Vote one Greens. Thank you, everyone. There's some wonderful colleagues there and some future senators in just 5 days, so that can be our team. And it's crucial that we get that balance of power in the Senate, because if the government changes but the Senate doesn't, they won't be able to change a thing. So that's why I'm so proud of Penny and Barb and David and all of our Senate candidates right around the state. But it is now my great pleasure to introduce the most wonderful man who works so incredibly hard, is so good at everything he does. He's got to be bad at something, but we haven't found it out yet. Maybe he's a terrible cook, I don't know. You can tell me later, Adam. But we are so proud of this man who has led this party through what's been a very tough pandemic and the tail end of a very, very grim neoliberal government for 9 long years. And yet here we are with the boldest and most progressive platform I think that we've ever taken to the electorate, and people love it. So we love him for it. Please give Adam Bandt, the leader of the Australian Greens, a wonderfully warm welcome.
Oh, look, thank you so much, Larissa, and thank you for that amazing and informative and really generous welcome to country. I too want to acknowledge the traditional owners and acknowledge that we are on stolen land where sovereignty was never ceded. And we do a pretty bad job as white fellas in Parliament about telling the truth about the violence and dispossession that lies at the beginning of this country and its history. And until we tell the truth, we're never going to have full justice in this country. We need to start telling the truth, and we need to have a treaty with our First Nations people so that we can move forward together. It is so wonderful to be here with a few hundred of my closest friends and thousands more online, because together, just mark this moment, we are about 5 days away from talking about former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. And that change can't come soon enough. There is a mood for change sweeping the country that the Greens are a part of. Our support is growing, our vote is growing, and the number of seats we'll have in the next Parliament when we kick Scott Morrison out will grow as well. We are on the march. Now, we are seeing a big surge towards the Greens as we head towards election day, because people around this country know that we are in a climate crisis. We're in a climate crisis, and what has this government done during the climate crisis? It has done everything in its power to make the climate crisis worse. We're living through droughts and fires and floods, and this government says they want more coal and gas. We know coal and gas are the biggest causes of the climate crisis, but this government is pushing more, and they're using public money to do it. But we're also in the grips of an inequality crisis, where young people can't afford to buy a home, and even renting is out of reach for many. And when this government came to power, the average mortgage was about $340,000, and it's now $600,000. And rents in this area have gone up by more than 25%. And having a roof over your head should be a human right, but this government is putting it out of reach. And that is why this government has got to go. But what we've seen over the last few years, as we've been fighting in the Parliament to tackle the climate crisis and to tackle the inequality crisis, every time we get the government on the ropes and say we're going to push you to change, Labor stands up, walks over and votes with the government. Voting, instead of siding with us, Labor has supported the Liberals to use your public money to open up and frack the Beetaloo Basin, which would be a climate bomb. Labor has supported the Liberals to rip $244 billion out of the budget to give tax cuts of $9,000 a year to the likes of Clive Palmer, while people in this wealthy country of ours live in poverty. So we are taking the fight up to this terrible government right around the country, and that is why our support is growing. From Dorinda Cox, who is leading the charge in Western Australia to fight for First Nations rights and to make the big gas and coal corporations pay their fair share of tax, to Barbara Pocock in South Australia, who is poised to become our second senator for that state, bringing with her a wealth and a lifetime of experience fighting for justice, fighting for a fairer economy. And down in Tasmania, Peter Wish-Wilson, set to be re-elected, taking up the fight to ensure that our oceans remain healthy and that we tackle the climate crisis, because we know we've only got a fixed window of time left to make the changes that we need. And of course, in my state of Victoria, the fierce fighter Lydia Thorpe, on track to take up the battle in the next Parliament, where I am so proud that we have 2 out of 10, 20% of our party room being First Nations women. And if the rest of the Parliament looked a bit more like our party room, we would be a long way closer to having justice in this country. Of course, in New South Wales, we're also on track to have a second Senator, David Shoebridge, if voters continue to support us in the numbers that they've been coming out so far. He has taken up the fight to expose corruption wherever it occurs, and his pledge is to join with our party room to push for a federal corruption watchdog with teeth in the first weeks of the next Parliament, to ensure that before the next government starts spending a cent, there is someone looking over their shoulder to make sure money is going where it is needed, and that ministers aren't making decisions for their donor mates anymore. That is what we need, and that's what we've been fighting for. And of course, here in Queensland, it is going to be so terrific to have a voice from regional Queensland that is not Matt Canavan or Pauline Hanson or George Christensen. As Penny Allman-Payne potentially takes a seat off Pauline Hanson, or if not, pushes her out of balance of power. And we've seen how many terrible laws have been passed in this Parliament by one vote. Well, if we can push Pauline Hanson out of power by getting Penny Allman-Payne elected, it won't just be a win for the Greens, that will be a national service that the whole country will thank us for. And of course, Penny is going to join as the second senator here for Queensland, my very good friend and one of the most amazing fighters and thinkers in Parliament that I have seen, Larissa Waters, who has been taking up the fight for so long and is now going to have another Queensland colleague. But in this contest between a terrible government and a visionless opposition, people are turning to the Greens to put us in balance of power in the Senate, where we will be the largest third party the Senate has ever seen, able to push the next government to take action on the climate crisis and the housing affordability crisis. But also, really excitingly, in this narrow election contest that's become this narrow fact-checking exercise and personality jabs between a terrible government and a visionless opposition, in the House of Representatives, we have had candidates right in every seat across the country campaigning now for months and in some cases for years to give people a real alternative. And I can't thank or name them all, but I just want to pay special tribute to a few who are campaigning so hard right up to the finish line. Tim Hollow in Canberra is fighting for integrity and a frank and fearless public service to get the big corporate money out of politics and ensure that we restore our public service to where it is meant to be and stop continually contracting out everything to these private contractors that end up costing more and just deliver the advice that ministers want to hear. We need to defend the importance of our public service in this country, and the Greens will always fight for that. Sonia Semmons in Higgins is running an amazing campaign where they are in with a couple of % of winning, bearing in mind, of course, that that seat before has been a Liberal Greens seat. And of course, Piers Mitchell in Kooyong is taking the fight up to the Treasurer, again, another Greens Liberal seat, where Josh Frydenberg, I tell you what, I've never seen a man more fearful about losing his seat than Josh Frydenberg. Well, that's what you get when you go and back coal and gas and make the climate crisis worse. People don't want it. Steph Hodgins-May in Macnamara, in one of our closest seats, I've spent a lot of time in there. She is offering people there a real alternative. She will be an MP who doesn't just say one thing in the inner south of Melbourne and then go to Canberra and vote to lock up refugees or vote for more coal and gas. She will vote for Macnamara's values, and she is running an amazing, amazing campaign. Another incredible woman who I can't wait to have with us in the Parliament and who I've spent a lot of time campaigning with is Mandy Nolan in the seat of Richmond. And I can tell you, if you have seen Mandy Nolan in action, Canberra is not going to know what hit it when she is there. She'll be the first person in the House of Representatives who's intentionally funny, but she also knows, because she is living through it, together with everyone else in that area, we are seeing the intersection of the climate crisis and the housing crisis playing out there now. And Mandy and I sat round the table of someone whose house had been affected by the floods, so they had to move out. And they were being told that there was only one place available for them to rent nearby that was going to cost $1,400 a week, and they just couldn't afford it. And they were talking about separating their families to go, their family that lives together, to just be able to afford places to rent. The housing crisis and the climate crisis are being turbocharged under this government, and Mandy Nolan will do what the previous members have failed to do: fight to make housing affordable while we tackle the climate crisis for the people of Northern Rivers of New South Wales. But as Larissa said, there's some records that were made to be broken, and one of those is the record that we've had and held on to for a long time in Melbourne about having spoken to the most people, knocked on the most doors, turned our movement into a people-powered campaign that will go out and change votes and change seats and change the country. But can I say, having been through a few House of Representatives campaigns and having seen what it takes to win, I am so thrilled to be standing on stage with the next members for Brisbane, Ryan and Griffith, Stephen Bates, Elizabeth Watson-Bound and Max Chandler-Mather. A change is coming across the country, and a change is coming in Queensland. Why are people turning to the Greens in Queensland and right across the country? They have seen us offer a comprehensive plan to get out of coal and gas that creates jobs and looks after those workers and communities in coal and gas regions. Our plan that involves building on Australia's strengths, ensuring that we become the renewable energy superpower of the world, that we not only mine but process our green metals and minerals here, and that we create new industries like green hydrogen, all the while supporting coal workers as we transition out with a job-for-job guarantee that says we will make sure you don't lose any income during this transition, because we in the Greens know coal and gas workers are not the enemy. We are all in this together, and we have a costed plan to deal with it. And our plan creates over 800,000 jobs. And when you stop giving the handouts to the big coal and gas corporations, many of whom pay no tax, and you start making them pay their fair share, our plan actually saves the budget $51 billion over 10 years. That is the opportunity that's there for us when you tackle the big issues and have an honest conversation with people around the country. And when I was having one conversation with a coal miner, he said to me, look, the worst kept secret in this area is that we all know coal has a use-by date. We just want an honest discussion about how we get out of it. We have Liberal, Labor, One Nation all coming in promising that we can keep mining coal for the next 50 years and still meet our climate targets. We know that's not right. We just want politicians to stop lying to us. The Greens will put workers and communities first as we transition to a safe climate. But people are also turning to us because they know that we've got a plan to tackle this rising inequality crisis. We've got a plan to build 1 million affordable homes over the next 20 years that people can buy into for $300,000 or rent for 25% of their income without having to mortgage their future by digging into their super, or without having to go along to the auction, as is Labor's plan, where someone else has got more money in their pocket and so the prices just keep going up and up and up and up. But we're also the only party to think about renters this election and to say it is time for rent caps and a national standard of renters' rights and to give renters more protection against eviction. We are the only ones putting that on the table, and that is why people are turning to us. We know that we're not just facing a climate crisis, but it's a climate and environment and extinction crisis. And we have a big, bold plan that involves stopping logging our native forests and restoring the biodiversity and the rivers that are at the heart of this country, because we need to do that. And in fact, that will be key to tackling the climate challenge, is planting more trees, restoring our nature to start sucking down some of that pollution from the atmosphere. So we are the only ones talking about the environment this election, but we're also getting a lot of support because it is clear that we are the only ones that will take on the vested interests and the powers that be. Why? We're the only ones who can fix the problem because we're the only ones not taking money from those big corporations and billionaires that are causing the problems. And that's what we'll fight for. We are heading towards a really close election result, which means that for people, their vote this time is more powerful than ever. And we are on the verge of a minority parliament, if not in the House of Representatives, then certainly in the Senate. And the Greens are on track to be the most powerful third party in the next parliament. If, in balance of power, we will push the next government, once we've kicked the Liberals out, to get serious and take real climate action and stop opening new coal and gas mines. Right? We can have a debate in the next parliament about how quickly to get out of coal and gas, but everyone should be able to agree. Don't make the problem worse by opening more coal and gas mines, and certainly not with public money. You can't put the fire out while you're pouring petrol on it, and we will push the government to take action, including by joining the global movement being led by people like US President Joe Biden to say we've got to cut how much methane gas we use, because gas is as dirty as coal and we've got to keep it in the ground. But we'll also push to tackle the cost of living crisis. We will push for dental and mental health into Medicare. The last time we were in balance of power in the House and the Senate, we got dental into Medicare for kids. And as a result, more than 3 million people across the country have been able to go to the dentist and put their Medicare card on the table and pay for it for their children. We want to go back and finish the job and get dental into Medicare for everyone. We want to see 1 million affordable houses built over the next 20 years, and we want to go all the way and do like we do with public schools and make childcare free. We can make childcare free and we should make childcare free. We want to fight in balance of power for First Nations justice with progress on truth and treaty as well as voice, because that is critical to healing as a nation. And we'll also push to wipe student debt and make sure that no one lives in poverty in this wealthy country of ours by lifting all income support above the poverty line. And what we've announced in our Balance of Power shortlist today is not only those plans that people want to see the government do, but we've said we can pay for them without asking everyday people to pay any more. Why can we do that? Because we will make the billionaires and big corporations pay their fair share of tax. 1 in 3 big corporations in this country pays no tax at all. And when a nurse pays more tax than a multinational, something is seriously wrong. It is time to stop the handouts to these big corporations that are wrecking our planet and start making the billionaires and big corporations pay their fair share of tax. We will make Clive Palmer pay more tax so that you can fix your teeth, right? In this election, the others have gone small and the public has noticed that. We have tackled the big issues. We have a comprehensive plan to tackle the climate crisis and the inequality crisis. The Greens are on the march. We are fighting, we are growing, and we will win. This election, vote to kick this terrible government out. Vote for climate, vote 1 Greens.
To a quote from our least favourite Prime Minister, how good is Adam? Thank you so much, Adam, for reminding us why we're going to give absolutely everything we've got over the next 5 days and then double it. We'll not leave a single person unspoken to at the pre-poll booths. Make sure that we make that contact with every single voter and let them know that they can have a system that actually works for them. Politics can actually deliver a better life for people. Who knew? So thank you so much, Adam, for giving us just a reminder of why we're all so passionate about a better world and how we can have it. We have more Greens in the Parliament, particularly in balance of power. Now, it's not just the Senate, although of course that's my favourite chamber. Sorry, that's a bit weirdly parochial, but whatever. But we've got a real chance, as you've heard, to get some extra bums on seats and give Adam some better company. I mean, there's some okay indies in there, but the poor guy's got no one to talk to. So let's have some extra friends in there for Adam who can deliver the sort of wonderful speeches that Adam gets to deliver in Parliament. So I think we're going to hear from some of them now, and you'll see the calibre of people that we're talking about.
Something big is happening right around the country.
Across the ACT,
In Melbourne,
In Perth,
Here in Ryan.
in Brisbane,
In McNamara, we've been talking to voters.
And people are telling us that they want change.
they're fed up with the major parties.
And they want to elect people who are going to tackle the big issues.
people are telling us they want to see real climate action.
People are telling us they want to see our democracy strengthened with an integrity commission and urgent climate action.
Dental and mental into Medicare.
Get the big money out of politics, they want affordable housing, and they want to see a progressive tax system that funds universal public services like health and education. They're saying that it's a disgrace that in a country as wealthy as Australia, too many people are forced to live in poverty.
And they want justice for our asylum seekers and refugees.
we have the chance to be that change.
We're running our biggest grassroots political campaign ever, with candidates in every seat.
And this election, I'm running because our community deserves better than politicians who are bought by the fossil fuel industry.
I'm running to tackle the climate and inequality crises.
I'm running because I refuse to raise the white flag on climate change.
And I'm running for Ryan because we need change now.
Because of you, our movement is growing, and this election, your vote is more powerful than ever.
With your help, we can win here in Higgins.
This election, vote to kick the Liberals out.
Vote for integrity in our government.
Vote for free childcare and education. Vote for dental and mental health into Medicare.
Vote for your future.
Let's vote for climate.
Vote One Greens.
Authorised by J. McCausey.
So on election night, folks, we're going to have all of those tabs open on the AEC site because there are multiple opportunities to add more Greens to our parliament. And perhaps the biggest campaign in Queensland, well, actually not perhaps, the biggest campaign in Queensland is by my friend Max Chandler-Mather, who has the unenviable task of following Adam. But if you've heard Max speak, you know that he's going to knock your socks off. Please join me in welcoming the next member for Griffith, Max Chandler-Mather.
Good day, everyone. Feeling pretty good? $184 billion. That's how much the Stage 3 tax cuts are going to cost over the next 10 years. That's what the Labor and Liberal Party voted for. What it means is anyone earning over $200,000 a year gets an extra $9,000 a year off on tax. By the way, that's every federal politician down in Canberra. We've been having a lot of conversations, as you've heard, over the last 14 months, and I wanted to reflect on a few and reflect on what I think is the fundamental choice this election and why we have been fighting so hard over the last 14 months to break with the political status quo that is holding this country back. Just last week, I door-knocked a pensioner who waited 12 months on the elective surgery wait list because he couldn't afford private health insurance and he had been dealing with a cancer diagnosis and needed more diagnostics and form of elective surgery and endoscopy, by the way, to find out whether or not it had spread. And instead of fully funding our public hospitals, the Liberal and Labor Party chose to give $9,000 to Clive Palmer. When we were helping up with the floods, I met a family who, when they lost everything, they were forced to crowdsource the basics they needed to get on and rebuild their lives. And Labor and the Liberal Party, rather than choosing to fully fund public housing or build the housing that that woman and that family could have moved into, chose $9,000 for Scott Morrison. I door-knocked a family in public housing. The oldest daughter, adult daughter, had been on the public dental wait list for 18 months. And the Labor and Liberal Party chose $9,000 for Gina Reinhardt. I spoke to a teacher at one of our forums who spends hundreds of dollars a week to make sure that kids in her class get enough food to eat during the week. And Labor and Liberal Party chose $9,000 for a billionaire rather than fully fund our public schools and ensure every kid gets what they need to live a good life. And really that speaks to those conversations, the fundamental choice in this election, and one we've been putting to voters for the last 14 months at the doors, on pre-poll booths, via flyers, via phone calls, via everything. And that fundamental choice is this. In one of the wealthiest countries in the world, do we make the political choice to ensure everyone gets what they need to live a good life? Housing, food, health, education, a safe climate? Or do we allow that money to be siphoned off into the pockets of billionaires and politicians and big corporations? And the choice that the major parties have made time and again is the latter. And I think everyone here is fed up with that. And it is still something I really don't think that the political establishment get. Why is it when we face insurmountable odds, and we do, the millions of dollars in corporate donations, a hostile media, a political status quo entrenched for over 100 years, why do we keep fighting? Because we decided, whenever we joined the Greens or joined this movement, that we were going to fight for something greater than ourselves. When faced with the question, will you fight for someone you don't know as hard as you would fight for yourself, you all said yes. And so over And so over the last 14 months, we have door knocked on hundreds of thousands of doors, had hundreds of thousands of conversations. When the floods hit, we went into people's houses and helped clean up. When the COVID crisis hit, we were dropping off free boxes of food for people that needed it. This campaign across this country has already fundamentally changed people's lives, and you should be so bloody proud, so bloody proud, so bloody proud of what you've all achieved. And now we have less than a week to fight like bloody mad to win that future that Adam talked about. And think back to 2010, where there were people like us standing in a room like this in a place in Melbourne, and they were contemplating that last week. And because they knocked on those extra doors, because they got up that little extra in the morning, because they handed out that extra flyer, made that extra phone call, got that extra volunteer on the polling booth, there are 3.6 million kids walking around this country that get free dental because people like you did that. So I want you to take that in your hearts, think about that, think about someone walking around right now, someone you've spoken to, someone you know in your life whose life would be fundamentally changed if we got into the balance of power and got dental into Medicare or built public housing or capped rents or tackled climate change. Think about that person. Think about the fact that you aren't just fighting for yourself, that you are fighting for all of us. You're fighting for the politics that recognises that we all have more in common with a refugee on Manus or Nauru than we do with a billionaire like Clive Palmer. We're fighting for a politics that says in a wealthy country like this, no one should go without. No one. It is a basic tenet. It is so simple. It is so really unradical. And really, I would argue that it is the politicians in Canberra who stand in our way that are the radical ones, who think that in a country where mining corporations can export $500 billion worth of wealth out of this state, while there are 20% of kids living in poverty, that they think that is a normal state of affairs. Well, we don't here. So if you have already committed all you have over the next week, you know, that extra door knock, that extra peephole bill, or maybe you've made that extra donation, take that and then add an extra one. Because on May 22nd, you all get a chance to sleep. But you want, on May 21st, on that night, you want to be watching that TV, thinking about that person, thinking about someone you don't know whose life could change as a result of your hard work, and think, did I do everything I could over this week to make sure I change their lives for the better? Are you going to do that? Are you going to fight for that person in public housing? Are you going to fight to get dental into Medicare? Are you going to fight to tackle climate change? Well, let's go bloody do it, people. Woo!
Let's get that boy into Parliament, hey? Well done, Max. Now that is a first speech that you will all be glued to, I guarantee you. I cannot wait for that moment. So that's up to all of us. That brings tonight to a close, folks, because we have early mornings, thanks to Max telling us we've got to get up even earlier to work even harder, which I know we're all going to do after these wonderful speeches that we've heard from our dear colleagues and friends tonight. We can make this change. Our country needs us to. It's been almost a decade of a grim, nasty, greedy, selfish, male-dominated government. We need to get some compassion and some good sense and some forward thinking back into our politics. So that's why we exist. That's why we're going to win big on Saturday. And that's why I want you to just spend everything you've got. I want every last muscle used this week so that when you wake up on Sunday, we are waking up not only to a new government, and no more Spot Morrison, as my 5-year-old calls him. No more of him. He'll be like a dark spot on history. See what I did there? Yeah, thank you. But we will wake up to balance of power in the Senate and hopefully a minority government in the lower house so we can deliver on climate action, dental into Medicare, free childcare, building those affordable homes. All of the other great things that we will push for and that we will have the leverage to deliver. So this is it, folks. No more chances. Let's give it everything we've got in the next 5 days. Thanks, everyone.
and gas are the biggest causes of the climate crisis, but the Liberals and Labor want more.
Because they take donations from coal and gas corporations. They're backing their mates and putting your lives at risk.
The Greens put people first. If just a few hundred people change their vote, we'll kick the Liberals out and put the Greens in balance of power.
The Greens will push the next government to go further and act faster on the climate crisis.
Vote 1 Greens.
Authorised by J. McCall, Australian Greens, Canberra.